The architect of your mind, the invisible cage. What if the greatest prison you'll ever face is one you can't see? A prison your own mind builds, brick by brick, without you ever realizing it. It's a cage with no bars, no walls, no locks, and yet it can define the entire landscape of your life. This invisible architecture is forged from a single, powerful belief: the idea that there is simply not enough. This is the scarcity mindset. It's the deep-seated, often unconscious conviction that life is a zero-sum game. It's the belief that resources, whether time, money, love, or opportunity, are finite and limited. This perspective frames the world as a fixed pie, where every gain someone else makes is inherently your loss. It's a worldview characterized by fear, by stress, and a constant, gnawing preoccupation with what you lack. To understand its power, imagine you were forced to look at the world through a narrow cardboard tube. Through that tiny aperture, you can see only one thing with sharp clarity: the object of your perceived lack. A bill you can't pay, an opportunity you missed, a promotion your colleague received. Everything else, the vast, sprawling panorama of possibilities, solutions, and connections that exist just outside that narrow view, is completely invisible to you. That cardboard tube is the scarcity mindset. It doesn't change the world, but it dramatically changes your ability to see it. But this is not just a philosophical problem or a bad attitude. It is a tangible neurological state with measurable, damaging effects on the very hardware of your brain. Groundbreaking research from Princeton University has identified a phenomenon they call cognitive tunneling. When our minds are preoccupied with a sense of lack, it consumes an enormous amount of our finite mental resources, what scientists call bandwidth. This intense focus on the immediate problem of scarcity literally impairs our ability to think clearly about anything else. It hinders our capacity for long-term planning, for creative problem-solving, and for impulse control. Think of it in your own life. Have you ever been so worried about paying an overdue bill that you couldn't find the mental space to focus on the job application that could solve your money problems for good? That is cognitive tunneling in action. The urgent crowds out the important, trapping you in a cycle where the short-term decisions you make under the strain of scarcity only reinforce the long-term conditions of lack. The neurological costs go even deeper, eroding our very ability to connect with one another. A stunning neuroimaging study from 2023 discovered that inducing a scarcity mindset in people literally dampened their brain's capacity to feel empathy for others. The effect was immediate and profound, visible in their brain waves from the very first milliseconds of perception, altering both the initial shock of seeing someone in pain and the later, more considered emotional response. Their brains, at a fundamental level, were less able to process and share the emotional states of their fellow human beings. Scarcity, it turns out, is isolating. It turns us inward and makes us less available to the needs of others, further deepening the sense of being alone in our struggle. This state also hijacks the very machinery of our decision-making. Using fMRI scans, researchers observed what happens in the brain when we make choices under conditions of scarcity. They found a dramatic shift in brain activity. Power drained away from a region called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the brain's headquarters for executive control, long-term goals, and deliberate choice. Simultaneously, activity surged in the orbitofrontal cortex, A more primitive area involved in assessing immediate value. This is like the calm, strategic CEO of your brain being locked out of the boardroom, leaving a panicked, impulsive intern in charge of all major decisions. The part of you that plans for retirement is sidelined, while the part of you that craves immediate gratification takes the wheel. It's a neural recipe for suboptimal outcomes, prioritizing the fleeting want of today over the profound need of tomorrow. When you put these pieces together, a clear picture emerges. The scarcity mindset is an ancient survival mechanism gone terribly wrong. The cognitive and neural shifts it produces, the tunneling focus, the reduced empathy, the impulsive decision-making are incredibly useful if you are facing a true short-term survival threat, like finding food during a famine. But when that crisis mode becomes your chronic, day-to-day operating system, the mechanism backfires. It creates a powerful, self-perpetuating feedback loop that keeps you trapped, making it harder to plan, harder to connect, and harder to escape the very conditions your brain is trying to solve. But what if this cage has a key? What if our brains hold a secret, a hidden superpower that allows us to not only escape, but to become the architect of a whole new world? The brain's secret superpower. For centuries, we believed a profound and deeply disempowering story about ourselves, that the adult brain was a fixed, hardwired machine. We thought that, after a critical period in childhood, the essential structure and function of our minds were set in stone. But in the latter half of the 20th century, a scientific revolution quietly took place, overturning this dogma and revealing a truth about human potential that is as staggering as it is hopeful. That truth is called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's lifelong ability to change, to reorganize its own structure, its functions, and its connections in response to our experiences. It is the discovery that the 100 billion neurons in your head are not static components in a finished machine, but a dynamic, living, ever-evolving network. This single concept is the scientific bedrock upon which all personal transformation is built. It means that who you are today is not who you have to be tomorrow. Imagine your brain is a bustling, complex city. The old scientific view saw this city as having a fixed road layout. The highways, streets, and back alleys were permanent. If there was a traffic jam in one area, you were simply stuck with it. Neuroplasticity, however, reveals that this city is magical. It can actively reroute its own roads. It can tear down old, gridlocked streets that lead to frustration and build gleaming new superhighways that lead to effortless skill and well-being. And most importantly, you are the chief city planner. The fundamental rule governing this remarkable process was famously captured by the neuropsychologist Donald Hebb, who said, "Neurons that fire together wire together." This elegant phrase describes the very essence of how we learn and change. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every action you take causes a specific set of neurons to fire in a specific sequence. When you repeat that thought, feeling, or action, the same neurons fire together again. Each repetition strengthens the tiny connections, or synapses, between them, making it easier and more likely for them to fire together in the future. Think of it like creating a path in a dense forest. The very first time you walk from point A to point B, you have to push through tall grass and dense undergrowth. The journey is difficult, and you leave only a faint trail behind. But if you walk that same path every single day, the grass gets trampled down. The soil becomes compacted. Soon, you've carved out a wide, clear, and easy-to-follow trail. After months of repetition, that trail becomes a well-worn road, your automatic default route. This is precisely how our brains form habits, skills, and even mindsets. The pathways of scarcity, through repeated focus on lack, can become deeply ingrained superhighways of thought. This rewiring happens in tangible, physical ways. When you learn something new, your brain can literally sprout new connections between neurons, a process called synaptogenesis. It's like building new bridges between different neighborhoods in your mental city. To keep the system efficient, the brain also engages in synaptic pruning, trimming away the unused branches and weak connections. This is the use it or lose it principle at a cellular level, ensuring that the most important and frequently used pathways get the most resources. But here is the crucial, humbling insight. Neuroplasticity is a double-edged sword. It is a neutral process. The same mechanisms that allow a musician to master a complex sonata are the same mechanisms that can entrench the neural circuits of chronic pain, making the nervous system so sensitive that it learns to perceive pain from a gentle touch. In the same way, the very process that allows you to build a mindset of abundance is the same process that, left on autopilot, can deepen and automate the pathways of scarcity. The brain doesn't judge. It simply becomes what you repeatedly do, think, and pay attention to. This means that change requires intention. It requires a deliberate, disciplined process of retraining. It's about leveraging these incredible biological rules to consciously weaken the overpracticed scarcity trails and, at the same time, begin the work of forging new, wider, and more adaptive abundance pathways. If our brain is this malleable and we understand the rules of how it changes, then the next question becomes a thrilling one. What are the tools we can use to become the architects of our own minds? A toolkit for the mind. Becoming the architect of your mind is not about wishful thinking. It's about skill. It's about using powerful, evidence-based tools to intentionally direct the force of neuroplasticity. These mental practices are not chores. They are the levers and pulleys that allow you to take an active, conscious role in sculpting the physical structure and function of your brain. Let's open the toolkit. Tool 1. The brain's gatekeeper. Your brain is bombarded with millions of bits of sensory information every second. To prevent you from being completely overwhelmed, it has a sophisticated filter, a network of neurons in the brainstem called the reticular activating system, or RAS. The RAS acts as a gatekeeper, deciding what tiny fraction of that data is important enough to be granted access to your conscious awareness. And what's the password to get past this gatekeeper? Your beliefs. You program the RAS with what you decide is important. This neural filter works hand in glove with a psychological tendency called confirmation bias, our powerful innate drive to notice, interpret, and remember information that proves what we already believe to be true. The most famous metaphor for this is the red car effect. The moment you decide you want to buy a red car, you suddenly start seeing them everywhere you go. The number of red cars on the road hasn't changed, of course. They were always there. What has changed is your internal filter. You have given your RAS a new instruction. Red cars are now important. The same is true for everything else in your life. If you hold the deep belief that there are no opportunities out there, your RAS will diligently filter your reality to prove you right. But if you consciously choose to adopt the belief that opportunities are all around me, You are giving your brain a new search command, priming it to spot the very possibilities that were previously invisible to you. Tool 2. The gratitude lens. Gratitude is far more than a polite sentiment. It is a rigorous form of neurocognitive training. When you practice feeling genuinely grateful, you activate a powerful cascade of changes in your brain. Neuroimaging studies show that gratitude sparks activity in the brain's reward circuits, triggering the release of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, the same chemicals that are associated with motivation and well-being. This creates a positive feedback loop. The practice feels good, which reinforces your desire to do it again. But the effects are more than just fleeting chemical bursts. Consistent gratitude practice can lead to lasting physical changes. One study found that people who kept a gratitude journal for several months showed increased gray matter density in their prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for higher-order thinking and emotional regulation. Think of gratitude as a special lens you can choose to put on. This lens doesn't magically change the world outside of you, but it fundamentally changes what you are able to see. It doesn't erase the challenges or the difficulties, but it highlights the positive aspects of your life that were there all along, hiding in plain sight. Its true power lies in its ability to shift your attention. Researchers analyzing gratitude letters found that their mental health benefits didn't come from an abundance of positive words, but from a dramatic reduction in the use of negative emotion words. Gratitude, it seems, works by unshackling us from the heavy chains of resentment, comparison, and envy. Tool 3. The mental simulator. Your brain has a remarkable ability. It often cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. This is the principle behind visualization or mental rehearsal. When you close your eyes and vividly imagine yourself performing an action, whether it's sinking a basketball, nailing a presentation, or playing a piece of music, you activate many of the same neural pathways in your brain's motor cortex as if you were actually doing it. This mental practice strengthens those circuits, building competence and muscle memory without ever moving a muscle. However, science has revealed a critical distinction. The most common form of visualization, fantasizing about the wonderful outcome, is largely ineffective. Simply dreaming of standing on the winner's podium can actually decrease your motivation by giving your brain a premature sense of accomplishment. The effective technique is process visualization. This means mentally rehearsing the specific steps, actions, and strategies required to achieve the goal. This is best understood as a flight simulator for your life. Airline pilots spend countless hours in simulators, practicing how to handle engine failures and other emergencies. They aren't just fantasizing about a safe landing. They are mentally and physically rehearsing the exact procedures required so that if the real crisis ever occurs, the neural pathways for the correct response are already built and ready to fire automatically. In the same way, you can use process visualization to mentally rehearse a difficult conversation, a complex project, or a challenging performance, building the neural architecture for success before you even begin. Tool 4. The watchtower of the mind. In our hyper-stimulated world, our attention is constantly hijacked. Mindfulness meditation is a direct training regimen to take it back. The practice is simple, but its effects on the brain are profound. Research has documented extensive structural and functional changes from consistent practice, primarily strengthening the prefrontal cortex, your center for focus, and weakening the amygdala, the brain's hypervigilant fear center. This leads to less emotional reactivity and a greater ability to respond to life thoughtfully rather than reflexively. The core mechanism of mindfulness is learning to observe your own mind. It involves training your brain to disengage from its default mode of operation, a network called the default mode network, which is responsible for mind wandering, worrying about the future, and ruminating on the past. Instead, you strengthen the networks responsible for present moment awareness. Imagine your mind is a busy central train station, with thoughts constantly arriving and departing like trains on every platform. Many of us spend our lives compulsively jumping onto every train that pulls in, getting carried away to destinations of anxiety, distraction, or regret. Mindfulness is the practice of building a quiet watchtower high above the station. From this vantage point, you don't try to stop the trains, you simply sit and observe them. You notice a train of thought arriving, you acknowledge its presence, and you watch it depart without feeling the compulsion to get on board. Every time you notice your mind has wandered and you gently bring your attention back to the present moment, you are doing a single rep in the gym of the mind, strengthening the crucial muscle of intentional focus. These tools give us incredible power, but power requires wisdom. With any great journey into a new territory, there are false maps and hidden dangers. How do we navigate this path safely and avoid the traps of wishful thinking? Navigating the labyrinth, warnings and wisdom. The journey to reshape your mind is one of the most empowering adventures you can undertake. But this territory is also filled with pitfalls, from naive optimism to harmful pseudoscience. To walk this path effectively, we must proceed with discernment, grounding our enthusiasm in scientific reality and separating the genuinely transformative from the dangerously misleading. Warning 1. The trap of pure fantasy. The simple advice to just think positively can be surprisingly counterproductive. The research of psychologist Gabriella Oettingen has revealed a powerful paradox. Simply fantasizing about your ideal future can actually make you less likely to achieve it. Her studies show that when we indulge in daydreams of success, our brains can mistake the vivid fantasy for a real accomplishment. This creates a premature sense of reward that actually depletes the motivational energy we need to do the hard work of turning that dream into reality. In her experiments, participants who fantasized about success showed a measurable drop in blood pressure, a physiological sign that their bodies were relaxing, not mobilizing for action. The antidote to this trap is not to abandon our dreams, but to ground them in reality. Oettingen developed a science-based strategy called mental contrasting, which she summarized with the acronym WOOP: Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan. The method is simple but powerful. First, you vividly imagine your wish and the best outcome. Then you immediately pivot and identify the main internal obstacle that stands in your way. Finally, you make an if-then plan to overcome that obstacle. This simple act of contrasting the desired future with the real challenges of the present is what actually mobilizes the psychological energy needed to take effective action. It transforms passive fantasy into an active strategy. Warning 2. Debunking the law of attraction. It is absolutely critical to draw a bright, clear line between the neuroscience of mindset and the pseudoscience of the law of attraction. The law of attraction claims that your thoughts are a form of energy that directly manipulates the universe, magically attracting similar energy and causing your desires to manifest in the external world. Let us be clear, there is no scientific evidence whatsoever to support this claim. It misuses and misrepresents concepts from physics and biology to create a false veneer of scientific legitimacy. The harm of this belief system can be profound. By asserting that thoughts create reality, it leads directly to a cruel form of victim blaming. It implies that people are responsible for their own illnesses, for their poverty, or even for the abuse they suffer because their negative thoughts must have attracted these tragedies. This not only ignores the immense power of real-world systemic factors, but can cause immense psychological damage. In its most dangerous form, followers may reject proven medical treatments for serious diseases, believing they can simply think themselves well. The scientifically grounded truth is this: your mindset doesn't magically change the universe around you. It changes you. It changes your perception, your focus, your emotional regulation, and your behavior. These changes, in turn, allow you to interact with the world more effectively, which leads to better outcomes. The power is in you, not in a magical cosmic force. Warning 3. Acknowledging real-world walls. Finally, any responsible discussion of mindset must be placed within its proper context. Mindset is a powerful tool for personal agency, but it does not operate in a vacuum. To pretend that mindset alone can overcome all obstacles is to ignore the reality of systemic forces. Genuine poverty, deep-seated trauma, and pervasive social inequality are not simply mindset problems. They are immense, real-world walls that can profoundly shape a person's opportunities and mental state. These external conditions are precisely what can trigger and chronically activate the maladaptive survival mechanism we saw earlier, making the invisible cage and the real-world walls mutually reinforcing. These real-world walls can create what psychologists call scarcity trauma, a state where past experiences of genuine deprivation wire the brain for high alert, keeping the invisible cage locked shut long after the external circumstances have improved. To apply these ideas without acknowledging these external realities is to fall for the bootstrap fallacy, the mistaken and often cruel belief that individuals are solely to blame for problems rooted in systemic failures. The goal of this work is empowerment, not blame. It is about equipping you with a powerful internal tool to navigate your circumstances more effectively, not to pretend those circumstances don't exist. By navigating these warnings with wisdom, we can clear the path for a practice that is not based on magic, but on the real, grounded, and incredible power of our own biology. The Daily Blueprint. We have journeyed from the invisible cage of scarcity to the biological miracle of neuroplasticity. We have opened a toolkit of mental practices and learned to navigate the warnings that line the path. Now, we arrive at the final, most important stage: application. Cultivating an abundance mindset is not a one-time decision or a moment of insight. It is a daily practice, a consistent and disciplined process of brain retraining. It is the work of an architect, laying down a new blueprint for the mind, day by day. The principles of this construction are simple and clear. The core principles of rewiring: consistency and repetition. The language of the brain is repetition. Just as daily exercise builds physical muscle, consistent mental practice strengthens neural circuits. Practice, not perfection, is the goal. Focused attention. Neuroplasticity follows focus. Where your attention goes, your energy flows, and your brain's resources are directed. Conscious, focused attention is the signal that tells your brain which connections matter. Challenge and novelty. Comfort doesn't create change. The brain grows most readily when it is challenged with new ways of thinking and being, pushing just beyond its current capabilities. An integrated daily protocol. This is a blueprint for weaving these practices into the rhythm of your day, transforming abstract knowledge into lived reality. Morning. Value-based affirmations. Before the world rushes in, take a moment to engage in a practice with a precise neurological target. This practice targets a specific region of your prefrontal cortex, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, or VMPFC, which acts like a buffer against threat. By reaffirming your core values, you reduce your brain's defensiveness, making you more open, more resilient, and more receptive to growth-oriented information throughout the day. Identify your core values, like compassion or creativity, and craft I am statements that link them to your identity. Standing before a mirror, look yourself in the eye and state them out loud with conviction. Midday, process-oriented visualization. Before a key task or a challenging meeting, take 5 minutes to run a flight simulation in your mind. Don't just fantasize about success. Vividly and meticulously rehearse the process. See yourself preparing, focusing, navigating a potential difficulty with a clear strategy, and executing the task with competence. You are pre-paving the neural pathways for success, building both skill and confidence. Throughout the day, mindfulness sprints. Several times a day, take 1 to 3 minutes to simply stop. Close your eyes and bring your full attention to the physical sensation of your breath. Your mind will wander. That is its nature. The practice is not to have an empty mind, but to gently notice when your mind has been hooked by a thought, and then, without judgment, guide it back. Each time you do this, you strengthen the muscle of meta-awareness and calm your entire nervous system. Evening, gratitude journaling. End your day by deliberately training your brain's gatekeeper, the RAS, to scan for the good. Keep a journal by your bed and, before sleep, write down 3 specific, positive things from your day. Be detailed. Instead of, "I'm grateful for my job," write, "I'm grateful for the specific feedback my manager gave me, which helped me solve a problem and feel capable." This simple act rewires your brain to look for what is working, building the neural foundation for optimism and contentment. The final ingredients: self-compassion and realistic optimism. This path is not linear. There will be days when scarcity thoughts return with a vengeance. There will be times when you miss your practice. In these moments, the most critical ingredient is self-compassion. Responding to setbacks with kindness and understanding rather than harsh self-criticism is essential. Self-criticism activates the very stress circuits you are trying to calm, undermining the entire process. Self-compassion is the oil that keeps the machinery of change running smoothly. Ultimately, the goal is not blind positivity. It is a state of realistic optimism. This is the profound ability to maintain a genuine hope for the future, while honestly acknowledging and actively planning for the challenges of the present. It is the perfect synthesis of a positive vision and a grounded strategy. It is the mindset of an architect who can dream of a magnificent cathedral while also meticulously calculating the load-bearing capacity of every single stone. The most incredible discovery of modern neuroscience is not just that our brains can change, it's that we can be the ones to direct that change. You are not merely a resident of your own mind, you are its chief designer, its master builder. You are and have always been the architect of your mind.